You should be satisfied. You should wake up feeling satisfied with your life. Would you want to have lived an unsatisfied life? I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for you. I don't think any of us should live that way. I would like for all of us to consider that even when things are bad and going wrong, you can still be satisfied.
What are your thoughts on the idea of never be satisfied?
You know what? I understand why somebody would say that. You know, like you should always be hungry. Like you should always be chasing. That's a good motivator, you know, to get the next thing so that you wake up and you want to go get it. But that's a terrible way to live. You know, it's like I vehemently disagree with the concept that you should never be satisfied. You know, it's like you should be satisfied. You should be satisfied. You should wake up feeling satisfied with your life. It doesn't mean that you don't want the next thing. Of course you want the next thing. But like if life were to end today, would you want to have lived an unsatisfied life? No. Would you want I really do think of Peter at those last days. You know, and think about all the things that he was unsatisfied about. I don't want that for myself. I don't want that for you. I don't think any of us should live that way. So be satisfied. You know, and that doesn't mean lesser than.
Be satisfied even if you're just starting out as an assistant getting coffee, if you're the CEO, if you're anywhere in between, if you're in an off season.
Yes.
Be satisfied.
Be satisfied with like how wonderful you have it. You know, even the least of us, even the people who are like, you know, in this terrible place, like I said, like we can be satisfied. Like the day after Peter died, actually no. It was a few days later because we were having his funeral. He died on December 11th, 2013. It was 4 days before his 44th birthday. And so on his 44th birthday, December 15th, we had his funeral and made it a party.
Wow.
And I was sitting there and, you know, kind of in a haze, but then also, you know, that moment of clarity where I'm looking around the room and like his fraternity brothers are drinking beers and they're sharing stories about him, and you know, my daughter's like sleeping on my mom's lap, and I've got my sisters like in the corner trying to busy themselves, you know, like getting out plates of food and whatnot, and you see people connecting. And it was the oddest thought. You know, I looked around and I was just like, wow, like this is a good group of people. You know, this is a great place to be. To have this. And so I was satisfied in that moment. Most terrible thing had happened in my life. But I was looking around and feeling very satisfied with who I had around me. And that, I think, is what I would like for all of us to consider. That even when things are bad and going wrong, you can still be satisfied. You can still feel like, this is it. And it is okay. You know? It's okay.
I'm a big fan of the title of the book, The Urgent Life. And when I saw this, I was just thinking to myself, yes, right away, because we have like similar, completely different experiences, but similar feelings probably from experiences we've had. So my father got in an accident. He had a traumatic brain injury and was in a coma for 3 months when I was 21. Wow. And I remember we didn't know if he was going to live or die, but he eventually woke up after 3 months. And he was a completely different person. Like he was physically alive, but emotionally and mentally kind of gone. It took him a while to like learn how to talk again. He wasn't able to work anymore. He had amnesia. So when I'd see him, he'd be like, what's your name again? It was just a different type of relationship, right? I had to learn to love my father for who he was and start to grieve the man that he once was before, right? God. And I remember thinking he was in his early 50s when this happened. He had worked so hard for 30 years as a life insurance salesman, where he finally was starting to make money where he could like travel and have some freedom in his life. And he was starting to feel like he was happy for the first time, fully happy. And then this accident happened. And I remember being really angry at life that my dad didn't get to go live the rest of his life the way he wanted to. And I felt like I had so much urgency to go pursue everything I wanted, like from that moment on. I was like, I'm not gonna let any fear or insecurity hold me back. It might still be there, but I'm at least going to take the actions on my goals, my dreams, and live urgently. Because what if this happens to me? What if I get in a car accident tomorrow?
Yeah.
And something like that happens to me, I'd be sad that I didn't at least go try. And this, again, completely different experience you had, but it created a feeling of urgency in your life with your ex-husband, right? With your husband.
Yeah.
And which was almost 10 years ago?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yeah. 10 years this December.
And can you explain the story about what had happened with your husband around wanting to get divorced and then the cancer situation, and how being in a very dark, sad, challenging time, sad time, wanted you to create urgency at the same time and live into your best self during sadness. Can you explain a little bit about that?
Oh. Well, first of all, I really appreciate what you just said and shared about your dad, because I feel that for all of us who are living this life on this like hurtling rock that we call home, we don't always have to have had the same experience to understand essentially the concept of what I'm talking about.
Right.
This need for urgency. And it's not necessarily about the rush through life. It's about the intention. Knowing, like you said, I want to do these things because what if? So then you're intentional about saying, okay, I want to live a big life, or I want to go do this thing that I'm dreaming of, or I want to push a little harder because what if, right? And the same thing for me in that, I don't think of the end of life in this morbid way where I'm just like, oh, today might be my last day. I don't think of it in a morbid way. It's very inspiring to me, actually. It makes me want to get up and go do the thing. And again, it's not about a rush. It's like, I want to make the best use of my time that I have. I don't know how long it is, but I want to make the best use of it. And I'm also conscious of the fact that I won't do everything. And so that means that I have to be very intentional about the things I choose to do.
Yes.
Because if you walk around thinking I have the time, I'll just do everything at some point, then maybe you don't get to do anything at all. So I'm intentional in knowing that okay, I might not get a chance to complete everything. So what's the most important thing?
Right.
And then I want to do those things.
Right.
And so at the time in December of 2013, when Peter passed away, we were there, where, the stories are true. You're sitting at the deathbed and you're talking about all the things you wish you'd done.
Is that what he was saying?
Oh, yeah. We talked about so much.
Oh, man.
The things he wanted to do, his hopes and dreams, what he wants for Lael, our daughter, what he wanted for her in the future. All of those things. And I was sitting there listening and thinking and crying and making promises and all of the things, and knowing that I need to change the way I live. He wouldn't have a chance to do it over. So I need to do it. And it was such a dark time also because we were already going through so much on top of being at death's door, that our marriage had fallen apart. We had been separated for a couple of years already through so much, additional traumas that happened to us, misunderstandings, anger, that we couldn't overcome with just love. You think that
expectations, everything,
oh man, you think love conquers everything, and no, it does not.
Love is not enough.
Love is not enough. Love is not enough. And it was all of that turmoil that led us to that moment where I am sitting holding his hand as his breath gets shallower and shallower, and thinking about all the things I would have done differently if I had a shot to do it again. It's not necessarily that I wish life had turned out differently. It's just that I wish I had been motivated differently.
What were you motivated by before then?
Oh man. I think at that time I was motivated by just my own need for my own life, not really focused on anybody else's. And that sounds very selfish, but that's where I was.
Right.
It was not, I was a mother and a wife, but I was so only focused on myself.
Really?
Yeah.
At that
for
time?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, it's there was so much that had happened on my path to motherhood. And it's another one of the things that, like, now I talk about so openly, because we also paint motherhood like it's supposed to be like this great, amazing thing that, like, oh, you get pregnant and then all of a sudden it's like, oh, all this love shows up from nowhere and you're just like encapsulated by this person. It's like, no, that actually doesn't happen all of the time.
Moments of that might happen.
Moments of that might happen,
The
but it's
majority of
not,
the time, it's probably like
Look,
cleaning
yeah,
diapers and feeding
yeah,
and pumping and all the things that moms have to
and
do.
sitting there and being like, oh, hell, I made a mistake.
Right.
This is not what I wanted in my life, and struggling with that. And there were so many times where I thought about that. It's like, wow, like, is this life what I actually wanted? And so then at that moment in December of 2013, I was like, oh no, I have to make the life that I want. I have to make it. I have to be an active participant.
What was the biggest lesson during that time you feel like you learned about his regrets, or about him not doing the things that he wanted to do?
Yeah.
What opened up for you during that time that shifted,
Yeah.
if anything did shift for you in that?
This might sound funny, but I think logic is what surprised me most. The logic of things. The writing down. It's like almost like the writing down of the plan. Things that make sense. Because you're like, oh, I'm going to do these things. I'm logically going to take these steps in order to get to that thing, right? And all of his regrets, everything that he wanted to do that he didn't get a chance to do, was based on the logic of the steps to get to that thing that he never got to.
Like just scheduling it in the calendar, or like booking
making
the
the
trip,
to-do
or
list, and then it's like, oh, I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and then all based on logic. Life is not made of logic. Life is magic. It's the accidental encounters. It's the things that you can't explain. The feeling that you get in your belly that makes you feel alive and glittery. Or it makes you super sad and you don't want to get out of bed and the sky just looks gray. And then maybe one thing happens, you're like, oh, okay, I can do it. That's life. And being open to that is actually what gives you the experiences. So therefore, when perhaps you don't accomplish everything that was on your plan, you still feel really happy about the things that you did do, because it was also magical. And I'm not talking about like these big firework things. I'm talking about the little stuff too. The new person that you meet on the way to somewhere, or like the meal that you had that you didn't think was going to be delicious, that you just really savored. It was just magically amazing, and just being appreciative of those moments. So again, it's like the life is not just about like the big, big, big stuff. It's not the headlines. So to me, it's like logic is what I then threw out the window.
Interesting.
I was like, oh, I'm not going to live a logical life. I'm going to live a magical life. The kind that is open to all of the things I can't explain. That like the writing down of the list and the making the steps. And I'm not saying that you walk around just like, oh, la-di-da-di-da, whatever happens today is what happens. Like, look, we all got to be responsible adults.
Sure.
Okay. But the truth of the matter is that, like, how many of our plans have been stopped because of logic? The things that you said, like, well, shoot, I can't do that because of this reason, that reason, and that reason. And sometimes it's other people's logic that actually stops you from doing the things you want to do. And so I want to stop that. I've been active in being like, every time I approach a new ambition or a new idea, or like, oh, I want to take a trip here, and that logic starts to come in, I'm like, girl, where's that magic? You better just step out and let the magic find you.
Ooh, yeah.
And not stop yourself because the math is mathing.
Right. It doesn't make sense logically.
It doesn't make sense logically.
Allow wonder and synchronicity to enter your life.
To happen. Louis, I can't tell you how many things have happened in my life that don't make sense.
Right.
The fact that I've had the career I've had doesn't make sense. It's not logical. There's no stat. Even when you look at things like, oh, how many Black women CMOs have had jobs at, for like Fortune 50 companies. There's no math. There's no data point because it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
But I exist. So can you explain that? No, you cannot. So opening yourself up to like these things is what actually creates your destiny to like run the way that it should. I'll give you one example. When Peter died in December of 2013, I was at PepsiCo. I'd been there for 10 years.
Wow.
It was a great job. I'd done many iterations of things, and at that time, I was the head of music and entertainment marketing. And so I had been part of the team that did a deal with the NFL for the Super Bowl halftime show. I put Beyonce on that stage. Like, it was like, you know,
huge.
it was huge. Having a great, exciting career. And then Peter died. And I looked around and I was like, man, like, you know, I think I want to do more things, you know? Am I going to sit here for another 10 years in New York City, like, doing this, or have I had enough of this? And as I formulated that thought, I went to, I think it was NBA All-Star or something like that. And I met somebody that I knew very, you know, lightly, who told me that Jimmy Iovine and Dr. Dre had started their company Beats Music off of the back of Beats by Dre, and that they were looking for head of marketing. Would I be interested? And the job was in LA. My husband had been dead maybe 2 months. I had a 4-year-old child that I was trying to figure out how to raise by myself.
Right.
You know, like all these things. And so logic would tell you that no, sit your down. You know what I mean? Like, situate your life. Figure out how to be a widow and a single mom and the main breadwinner. Like, figure that stuff out. Calm down, get some therapy. You know, just like sit and be quiet for a second, grieve. Let a year go by and then figure out what you want to do. But instead, I was like, it really doesn't make any sense for me to leave Pepsi, a long established company, and go to Beats Music, where it's barely a company.
Some new thing, yeah.
I didn't even know what music streaming was. I had no idea what the hell that was. I had no idea. But I came to LA and took a meeting with Jimmy, and he was talking about stuff that I had no idea about. And when I resigned from PepsiCo to take the job, everybody told me it was a bad idea. It was when I tell you there was not one person who supported it.
Wow.
Not even my mother.
Wow.
No one. Everybody thought I'd lost my mind. People thought I was acting out of grief. Maybe I was. You know, but the magic was that opportunity opened up the next 10 years of my life.
Yeah.
It was the magic, the spark that I needed.
Think of all the amazing things in life that are expressions of just you. For instance, the song you stream over and over again while you're in your 13th hour of gaming at 4 a.m. in the morning with all the lights off, trying not to wake up your roommates. Or the recommendations that you share with your friends on the top 6 comedy podcasts that are the best to listen to on your way to the gym and back. Or even your new haircut, which may or may not be an epic bowl cut from the 90s and hopefully is. Everything that makes you, you, makes all the difference. State Farm believes insurance should work the same way. Your plan, your coverage, they need to be personalized to you. And the ability to choose the plan you want by picking the options that fit you, like building your home and auto policies, is exactly what the State Farm Personal Price Plan is all about. Getting the coverage you want at an affordable price just for you. So, are you ready to make things personal? Call or go to statefarm.com today to create your State Farm Personal Price Plan. Prices vary by state. Options selected by customer, availability, and eligibility may vary.
Where do you see yourself growing to the next level?
I think that when I started this journey in my life of trying to make wisdom go viral and to share ideas and help people train their mind for peace and purpose every day, there was a certain speed and pace that allowed me to figure out what I needed to do every 12 months. And now I feel like I'm moving away from thinking about the next 12 months to thinking about the next 12 years and thinking about the next 20 years and thinking about the next 30 years. And so I feel like I'm at an evolution and growth in my own life where a change of pace will be what I'm looking for, because I found that up until now, I felt like I had to do lots of little things all the time to be able to establish what I'm doing today. And now I realize it's actually going to take fewer, bigger things that you can only get to if you've done this step before. Right. But now I realize that that's what it's going to take. And so.
And what about the, you know, you've been studying this for the last few years and teaching deeper insights on love, practicing it, writing about it, speaking about it on stage, in podcasts, things like that. Where do you see yourself growing in love with friends, family, your marriage, and with yourself moving forward after this work?
Yeah. So what I found was, as I was doing this work, I realized that often the blocks to love are not because you don't have the deep intention to love people, but it's that you are putting yourself under so much stress and pressure that you're too agitated and irritated to be present and actually share love. So I saw this study that talked about how you think you don't wake up early the next morning even though you wanted to because you're bad at waking up early. But the truth is, it's because you're actually experiencing stress. And when you're experiencing stress, you can't implement a new habit. And so reducing stress allows you to be the person you want to be. If you think about when you say something you don't want to say, it's because you're irritated.
Reactive.
When you do something you don't want to do, it's because you're stressed. When you react to someone in a way that you don't think is yourself, it's because you're agitated. So we act in unloving ways because we are putting ourselves under stress, irritation, agitation, or pressure. And so for me, what I've realized that if I want to be my best loving self and be present with each and every person and be conscious of that energy, I have to learn to not put myself under so much stress that I can't be present.
Right.
So that's been a big lesson of love, that you can't love while you're putting yourself under stress or pressure in any way.
And it goes back to your kind of theme about peace and purpose every day. I don't think you can fully give your authentic heart without being peace.
Yes.
Without being in a state of peace. And I understand life happens and stresses happen, but creating a baseline going back to peace so you can be present.
Yeah.
But when we're not in peace, when we're stressed, you're in scarcity mode. You're in fight or flight. You're not present with your friends or family, your loved ones, or just acquaintances. You're reactive.
Totally.
And people don't feel loved when you're not present.
Yes, exactly.
When you're not looking them in the eyes or just listening to them and being in a good state of being when you're around them.
Yeah. The other one that came to mind when you said that, as you're speaking, is Russell Barkley said that the people who need the most love ask for it in the most unloving ways.
Wow.
And
So true.
the commitment I've made to myself is I no longer want to ask for love in unloving ways. I no longer want to be snappy to feel loved. I no longer want to be demanding to experience love. I no longer want to make someone else feel a passive-aggressive comment to feel love. I want to communicate about the type of love I need in an open and honest way, rather than trying to hope that someone else is going to figure it out because I'm sending subliminal messages or I'm being distant or I'm avoiding them. And so that was something deeply that I learned, was that we just constantly keep asking, even the people that love us the most, we keep requesting and demanding love in the most unloving ways.
Yes.
And if we can free ourselves of that, you can actually make a relationship really special and beautiful. And so we have to let go of that.
Yeah. People who've come on, who have done great things and done it over a short period of time, or gotten notoriety, or gotten, well known, or different things, or had a big exit when they didn't have money. Essentially 5 years ago, you weren't on the map. You didn't have a big audience, you didn't have a lot of money, you didn't have the New York Times bestsellers, you didn't have all these things. I'm curious, before all that started, on a scale of 1 to 10, the peace and self-love scale, let's call it. 10 being you had total peace and love for yourself and love for the people around you, and you were present all the time. 1 being you hated yourself. Where were you before we met? And then where are you today after success?
Yeah, that's a great question. I'd have to say that I was probably at a 7 or 8 before, to be honest, because even though my work's been noticed publicly in the last 5 years or 6 years, there was a whole 10 to 11 years before that where I literally did this for whoever showed up.
5 people.
Literally. So like when I was 18, and of course in my first book, I tell the story of how I met monks. I had a society at university called Think Out Loud. And what it was a community where I would put out flyers and posters myself, and whoever wanted to come from my university would attend. And it was called Think Out Loud. I would dissect a movie based on philosophy,
That's cool.
psychology, and spirituality. So I would take a movie like Inception and I would break it down. I'd take a movie like Notebook and break it down. I'd take a movie like
Good Will
The
Hunting.
Butterfly Effect,
Yeah.
Good Will Hunting. Like I'd take these
That's cool.
incredible movies and I would do these sessions. They'd be absolutely free. And I did it for the first year and 5 to 10 people came. Second year, maybe 25 people came. Third year, there were sometimes where 100 people were in the room. And I was just doing it because I loved it. Then I became a monk. When I came back, I did the same thing in the corporate world. I had an event in London called Conscious Living. It was on a Friday night. Literally 5 to 10 people would show up once a month, but it would make me so happy to spend hours with them afterwards. I would literally do a session. I'd serve everyone food because we'd always sit down to break bread. And then we'd sit down for 2-3 hours and I would just answer people's questions and sit with them. And I didn't have any followers. I didn't have any platforms. I didn't have any audience, but I loved it. And so I was already living the dream, in my opinion, because I was getting to do what I love on top of having a day job. And to me, that felt realistic. When I look at my happiness and joy now,
Scale of 1 to 10, and like
I'd say, to be honest, there's days when it's a 9 and there's days when it's a 5.
Really?
Yeah. It oscillates and it's because,
why is that?
well, I think it's because I've taken on so much more now to think about, to be in charge of, to lead. You have other people that you're responsible for. You have teams of all of these people that rely on you to do what you do best and take care of them and connect, and they're trying to help you out and build with you. And so the responsibility scale level is so much higher now. And so it's not that I don't feel peaceful in my purpose, but it's that you do deal with daily stress, daily challenges, daily pressure in a way that I didn't before because
Right.
it was just about me.
This is so fascinating because pretty much everyone I ask says something similar.
No way.
Where this, like, they were peaceful, they loved them, they had more confidence before. It's not saying you know more confidence, but on the scale of like inner peace and self-love and fulfillment, it was like almost less on every scale because of the weight, the pressure, just so much more going on and
Yeah.
needing to navigate
Yeah.
a lot more going on in life as
Yeah.
opposed to more of a simple, peaceful life.
But one thing I've understood though with that point is that the reason why that translate is that discomfort is where you grow.
That's it.
And that's what I realized.
Can't stay comfortable.
You can't. And so I find that a lot of my life today, I often say to people, like, I think 75% of my working week is in my discomfort zone. And so I really crave comfort in my relationships. I crave comfort on my
Peace at home,
weekends.
I want to relax. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah, I have great relationships with you, of course, and we have a good group of friends, and I have good relationship with my wife, and like, so I rely on my personal relationships to have some comfort and some stability as I take on discomfort in my service and purpose. And so I think that makes sense. And so I think you also just get better at understanding what growth looks like and what you need. I think if I just sat and lived that life forever, I don't think it would have stabilized. I don't think I would have stayed at a 7 or an 8. That would have probably come down as well, but for different reasons. Right. And so the reason that now it comes down are actually positive, healthy reasons, or can be managed in a healthy way.
Yes.
I didn't know who I was for a very long time. And still I'm trying to learn who I am.
Yeah, me
And
too.
You are?
Yeah.
But you seem like you have it all figured out.
Oh, God. No, I don't. No, I don't have, I mean, first of all, I think the one thing I've learned in my research above all else is that in the absence of love and belonging, there's always suffering. So when I hear about your experiences growing up, that's suffering.
Yeah.
You know, that's real suffering. And for me, not making the drill team when I was, I think it was in 8th grade, by itself is not a lot, but how my family responded to it. It was like when things changed for me and I didn't feel like I belonged to my family anymore. So I think that I still am trying to figure it out. I don't know that I've interviewed anyone, even spiritual leaders, who have the belonging thing completely nailed, because I don't think it is what we think it is. You know, I don't think that it's having a big posse of friends or having a crew or rolling with a bunch of people. I think I'm still trying to figure it out because I still feel lonely and alone and on the outside of things on a really regular basis.
Really? I mean, you're going on a book tour with thousands of people,
Yeah.
15-city tour,
Yeah.
millions of fans around the world, and you still feel alone.
Yeah, I can feel really lonely.
Why?
And it's really hard because, you know, you talk about that book tour. I'm severely introverted,
Yes.
super private, And so I love that connection between me and an audience, but it can also be hard on me. And also, I'm talking about things that no one, it's weird to me that people sign up to talk about them, but they're hard topics sometimes. And we laugh and we have fun and we'll sing. But I think what I've learned in doing the research on belonging is that belonging is being a part of something bigger than yourself, but it's also the courage to stand alone and to belong to yourself above all else. And so I think I spend a lot of time belonging to myself, and sometimes that makes other people uncomfortable. And so I think that's hard. I think I do feel, I'm always looking for, I don't know about you, but I'm always looking for the roadmap. Like I want to find the researcher, storyteller, Christian, lover of all people, fighter of the resistance. I want to find the blueprint of who's ahead of me believing what I believe in and doing it really well. But there's not really a blueprint sometimes. From, like
We're all trying to figure it out.
Yeah.
We're all trying to figure it out.
I don't get to copy anybody. And so it's hard.
Yeah.
It's still hard. But here's a thing that has changed everything for me. I belong to me. So even when I feel alone and I wonder like who's my crew and who are my people, I belong to me for sure, for the first time in my life maybe.
Yeah, and I think we lose ourselves sometimes by trying to belong in groups that we don't fit in.
Yeah.
I remember being in, the youngest on these sports teams growing up. I was playing on the junior varsity as a freshman or the varsity or whatever. So I was the youngest, and I remember just wanting to fit in, just like you did in the that team. And I wanted to fit in. I wanted to feel like they liked me, like I mattered, like I was the cool kid or whatever. And when they would do things that I didn't really agree with, or they would bully other kids or make fun of people, it's like I didn't want to not say anything. I didn't want to stand against them because I wanted to belong.
Yeah.
So if I did stand up against them, then that means I was alone. And that was my biggest fear, was being alone.
No, yeah, because that's what teams and groups deliver. They deliver this thing that you're not alone.
Yeah.
The problem is I was so shocked to learn in the research that the opposite of belonging is fitting in. Because fitting in is assessing a group of people and thinking, who do I need to be? What do I need to say? What do I need to wear? How do I need to act? And changing who you are. And true belonging never asks us to change who we are. It demands that we be who we are. Because if we fit in because how we've changed ourselves, that's not belonging. That's not belonging, because you betrayed yourself for other people. And that's not sustainable.
Yeah, you start to lose yourself.
You start to lose yourself, exactly what you said. And so I think it's hard. You have to show up as who you are.
How do we find out who we are?
That's the life's work, right? That's freaking hard.
Do you know who you are?
Yeah, I do.
Who are you?
In what way?
If someone just said, who are you, Brene, what would you say?
Brene Brown. Mom, partner, researcher, storyteller, Texan. I don't know, I'd ask them how much time they have. Because, the thing is that we want to, when we ask people who they are and we want to know, we'd like those really easy files to put them in.
Yeah, of course.
But I'm a complicated person.
Are you?
Yeah, and so I think I know who I am.
What makes you complicated?
I don't know if I'm complicated, but I'm complex.
You're interesting.
I hope so.
Very
Some days
interesting.
yes, some days no.
Very interesting.
I think what makes me complex is, I think what makes everyone complex is the paradoxical nature of people. So, like I speak in public, I love doing that, but I'm incredibly introverted.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a traditionalist around things.
Yeah.
My kids say yes ma'am, no ma'am, but I also raise them to challenge authority every time they get the opportunity to do that. But to be really polite when they're doing it.
Sure.
Yeah. So I think I'm unapologetically earnest. Like I believe in the goodness of people, but I believe it's hard work to stay out of fear and stay good.
Yeah.
And so I think I understand people. I think I have a lot of empathy, but I'm also not afraid of discomfort.
Yeah.
So I think there's just a lot of push and pull.
Sure.
And I think that's true of all of us. I do not like to be defined.
I think that's.
Do you?
I was going to say, I feel like my entire life, I didn't want to be defined as well. They were
Yeah.
like, you're going to be this jock in college,
Right.
you're going to be like this alcoholic, you're going to be in the frats.
Yeah.
All my siblings said this to me, and I was like, no, I'm not. I made a bet with each one of my siblings, $100 each, that I wouldn't have one sip of alcohol in college. Because I was like, I'm going to go against everything you think I'm going to be.
Yeah.
I joined the school musical because they were like, you're just going to do sports. I sang, I played guitar, I salsa dance. I was like, I'm going to do everything different than what people would expect of a tall white man, right?
That's
I was
awesome.
like, I want to be different.
Yeah.
And I think in that process, I was like trying to discover who I really was, what I liked, my
Yeah.
dreams, what was fun for me.
Yeah.
As opposed to just trying to fit the box and the mold of everyone
Right.
else. Because you can lose yourself in that fitting in, I think.
You can lose yourself in the fitting in, and you can lose yourself in the rebuttal to the fitting in.
It's true. Trying to go against it all too, yeah.
Yeah, it's really hard. I mean, it's this thing that it's a quote that is Braving the Wilderness is all about this, starts with this quote from Maya Angelou that we're never free until we belong nowhere. We belong everywhere, which is nowhere, which is no place at all, which I thought was a terrible quote for many years. And I was like, why are you saying that, Dr. Angelou? You're pissing me off.
Yeah.
But then I realized really, and she says, the cost is high, but the reward is great. And I think that's the thing, that I feel like I belong everywhere I go, no matter where it is or who I'm with, as long as I never betray myself. And the minute I become who you want me to be in order to fit in and make sure people like me is the moment I no longer belong anywhere. And that is hard.
Yeah.
I mean, that's a hard practice. That's an everyday practice.
Wow.
Yeah, because I can be whoever you want me to be like that.
You're like a chameleon, you said.
Oh, I can be totally like a chameleon. Like sometimes it's really funny because because I travel so much, I have all these miles. I always sit in business class, and I'm normally the only woman in business class. Every now and then there's one other maybe, which is a conversation we should be having too.
Sure.
But it doesn't matter what dude sits next to me. Like I can talk about whatever that person like. And it's so funny because we'll talk about sports usually first, or football, or we'll talk about politics, and he'll say, what do you do? And I'll say, I study vulnerability and shame. Oh, well, I'm gonna play some Angry Birds, and right that moment, like I can
Right.
just, and it's not that I know everything about everything, it's just,
So you're saying most men don't want to chime in and learn more about that?
no, that's usually, if I want to go to sleep, I'm like, I'm a shame researcher. What do you do? And you're like, okay.
Right.
But I think I can be anything. Like,
Yeah, you're adaptable.
I'm adaptable, and adaptable is great because anyone that comes to my home or here to work, I can make you feel comfortable.
Of course.
But then if I get so adaptable that my goal, my intention of adapting is to make sure you like me, then that's when I betray myself.
Yeah. When would you say is the time in your life you've been the most alone?
High school.
It's the whole journey.
Yeah, it just sucked.
It does suck.
And my daughter just graduated from high school, and she had this amazing experience. Just incredible experience, and it was so healing to watch.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah, and I think it happened because she had the confidence to put herself out there, and student council president, and that kind. I think because we have a rule at our house that no matter what, you belong here. No matter how goofy, awkward, afraid, wrong, it doesn't matter. You belong here. And so I think when we give our kids a platform like that at home, it gives them the courage to take risks outside of home. Does that make sense?
Because they feel safe coming back. No matter
Yeah.
what happens, they always
Yeah.
have a place to come home to.
Yeah, and I grew up in a house where it was very chaotic. I'm the oldest of four. And fitting in and being cool was the most important thing. So I think without that pressure, I probably would have never tried out for that drill team. But in my world growing up, you only did two things. You were a cheerleader or you were on the drill team, and preferably you married a running back or a quarterback. I mean, that was the way it went. And so for me, I probably would have been like president of the French club, you know, or I would have been in debate or those kind of things.
Newspaper. Or,
Oh, for sure. Yeah, photographer of the yearbook.
Yeah.
But those things did not have a lot of value.
Really?
No.
Your parents didn't instill that as something credible or worthwhile?
No, it's just cool was the number one value at home. Cool, lots of friends, popular.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't I wasn't that thing. You know, I wasn't. And so what I did is I just started drinking, smoking weed, hanging out with, you know, I found a place to be, you know, cool. And yeah, that just goes bad fast.
Yeah. Before the interview continues, if you feel like you're not living your most authentic life, not leaning into your purpose, and not living the life that your future self would be extremely proud of, I've written a new book called The Greatness Mindset, and I think you're gonna love this. Through powerful stories, science-backed strategies, and step-by-step guidance, The Greatness Mindset will help you overcome all the different challenges in your life to design the life of your dreams and then turn it into your reality. Make sure to click the link below in the description to get your copy today. Okay, let's get back to this video. Have you ever had a conversation with your parents about this?
Oh yeah, we've talked about all of it.
You have?
Yeah.
You've let it go, you've processed it all? Or...
Oh yeah, because they read my books as I write them, and they're, they're like, shit, this is exactly what every parent wants, a child who grows up to be a shame researcher. But no, that's the miracle of my parents. Like my parents, they've taught me the best thing about parenting that anyone I think could ever know, which is it doesn't end when your kids leave. Like they keep growing and exploring and learn, and however hard it was for me not being able to be we did not do vulnerability growing up.
Really?
No. Like our family motto was literally lock and load. Like get ready, family trips, you're in the car for 5 hours, that's all 6 of us, you really have to go to the bathroom, but the rest stop is on the other side of the highway, we're not pulling over. Like suck it up, hold it. Like we were tough. Like we'd fall down and get hurt, my dad would say like, I got bigger scratches than that on my eyeball. Like we were tough. And so, and we were taught to outrun vulnerability. We were taught to suck it up, soldier on, get her done.
Yeah.
And so, however hard that was for me growing up, imagine what it was like for my parents in the 50s. My dad, who was the youngest of 6, his dad died when he was 16,
Was he able to process that or no?
No, he just did the next thing you do.
Right.
Played football, played college ball.
Yeah.
My mom, who's my grandmother, who I named my daughter after, was an alcoholic. And she was drunk every other day of my mom's life.
Wow.
But she was the most amazing person in the world. But everyone knew she was an alcoholic, so my mom wasn't allowed to have friends at her house growing up because it was the 50s and she was divorced. And so my mom became the head of the drill team and the valedictorian. And so however hard it was for me growing up, having to try to outrun vulnerability, it was a million times harder on my parents.
Yeah.
And they did what they knew how to do. And they loved us as much as they could love us with the tools they had. And so I think the hard part comes from people that I've interviewed my whole life where the parents don't grow and change. And they see anything a child trying to do differently as criticism of what they did, as opposed to my parents who lean in and say, tell me more about that. I have a funny story. We hear a funny story about my dad? Yeah, it's great. So we do a lot of choice theory with my daughter and my son. And so my husband's a pediatrician.
Okay.
So like we know a lot about child development from school.
Right.
And so when Ellen was little, we used to do this thing where we would say, you have 2 choices. Like, Lewis, you have 2 choices. You can either hand me the water, I'm gonna have to take it from you. What is your choice? So that if you decide not to hand it to me and I have to take it, it's not my fault. That was your choice, right? Yeah. And so one night I was talking to Ellen and we were at my dad's house in San Antonio and I was like, Ellie, you need to turn off Dora the Explorer. It's time to go to bed. And she's like, And I said, Ellen, you have 2 choices. You can get up and turn off the TV or I'm gonna get up and turn it off for you. And if I have to get up and turn off the TV, you're gonna lose privileges to watch it tomorrow.
And that's your choice.
Yeah, that's your choice. So do you, and I would hate that for you, but that will be your choice. And my dad was sitting in the recliner next to me, and he's like, ah, damn, sis, what are you raising, a hostage negotiator? And I was like, Dad, and he's like, seriously, Brene? We had 4 of y'all, we didn't have time for that.
Yeah.
So the next day I come home, I'm visiting friends in San Antonio, and he's watching Ellen, and he's in the driveway, it's like 110 degrees in San Antonio, and he's sweating. He's like, Ellen, you have 2 choices. You can either put the bicycle up, or I'm gonna have to put it up for you. And the second one's a dumbass choice. So I was like, wow, you're so close.
You're getting there.
You're getting there. But
You're getting there.
my parents are amazing in that way that like, they're learning and changing. So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
think it's harder when parents say, I'm done. What you got was what you got. No apologies, no change,
Take
no
it or leave
amends,
it.
take it or leave it.
Yeah.
And if you do it differently with your own kids, you're a sucker.
Wow.
And I think we see that a lot.
Yeah, we do. I mean, what should parents be learning about how they can grow? I mean, how can they start to be aware? Because I think it starts with being aware
Yeah, for sure.
of what they know and what they don't know, and being receptive to learning something different, which is really hard to do, I think,
It's
once
hard.
you've had these habits for so long. So that's the first thing. And I want to dive into the lack of vulnerability with what's happening in Charlottesville right now as well,
Yeah.
because I know you did something on that this morning. So I guess how can parents listen to this and be aware and be willing to move forward in a different way of learning something new when they're so stuck in their ways, potentially, that it's worked for them to this point to get to where they're at?
You know, I think I believe this with my whole heart. I believe that 99.9% of parents are truly waking up every day and doing the very best they can with what they have.
Yeah.
I don't think there are a lot of parents who wake up and maliciously try to screw up their kids or hurt their kids or belittle or shame their kids. I think we're doing the best we can with what we have. And so I think to let go of the idea that if I have done something that I could have done better or that I could learn from, that I have to just come down. People defend their parenting like they're defending their lives because it's such a shame minefield.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, a great example is the work you're doing around men and vulnerability. I cannot tell you the number of fathers and the hundreds, if not thousands of fathers I've interviewed that said, I shamed my son every time he was vulnerable.
Yeah.
I put him down, I made fun of them, I hit him every time he was vulnerable. And now I look back and I know it's because that's the way I was raised, or I was afraid he'd be soft and get hurt at school, or, you know, whatever the thing is. And so I think for parents, it's about understanding, giving yourself permission to not have been, I'm not perfect. Like, you know, like I've never not been a researcher and a parent. My husband's
Yeah.
a pediatrician. Our kids will be in therapy.
You're right.
And the reason why I think that'll be so successful is there's only 2 kind of kids you raise. Kids who will ask for help when they need it, or kids who won't. And that's as good as it gets, is to raise a kid who'll ask for help.
Yeah, I never asked for help.
Yeah.
I was always suffering inside.
Yeah, right.
And I always felt shameful, guilty,
Right.
and I just, my way of asking was being angry, resentful, mad, hitting people in sports
Yeah.
or outside of sports, because that's all I knew.
If you have something inside of you, an idea inside of you, a seed, and bringing it to life as into a business can be the same thing as bringing a child into life. It's an idea, a seed, a thought that you want to create. So it's a creation either way.
Yeah. Yes. And look, I'm all for biology. I think that's very powerful. But there are those moments, right? Those intuitions. Like when you have a baby, there's like the woman's intuition. Like
Yes.
we're giving so many things in order to be able to protect the baby. And yet with business, like I have learned to start to listen to my intuition just the same. It's like, I think intuition has to be trained. I don't think it's just like, oh, you got intuition. It's fine. You're amazing. You know everything. It's like, no, we learn intuition as we get older. That look, that one time, that one person gave me a look, ended bad. Your body
You
remembers.
feel it, yeah, of course.
So
What would you say is the biggest insecurity or fear you still are faced with today?
really starting anything new. I mean, that's never, even writing this book, it's like, I don't know how to write a book. And even getting interviewed, right? It's like, I don't know how to be interviewed about a book. So it's not so much insecurity now in the sense of it. I don't feel petrified, but like, I know I'm not equipped. And so is that an insecurity? Sure, but it's a valid insecurity because I've never done a book before. So anytime I fear that, that fear of like, oh, you're about to enter a space that you don't know, I just reassure myself. It's like, oh, it's day one. It's day one. Give yourself the grace to know anything you try is day one. We do it at college, right? I bet you did it at practice. Like the first time you picked up a football, you weren't thinking that you were going to be the best quarterback in the world, right? It's like, oh, I've got to learn how to freaking throw the ball. So that's what I do. Just day one, anytime I feel the fear over anything new, Lewis, anything, I have these mantras, I have these tactics, I have these tools. Everything I put in the book, it's like, okay, Lisa, you've got radical confidence. Radical confidence means that even with the fear, you're going to move forward, but you need to practice. You have to go in with a mindset that you're going to learn and have a game plan. And then when you fall on your face, get back up. Like that is my superpower. I wish I could be amazing at things, but I'm not. So I remind myself my superpower is I'm the person that gets back up.
Yeah.
And that's encouraging.
That's beautiful. And what about around money? How has your mindset shifted? Do you feel like you have created more confidence or more self-love or more belief in yourself as the money started to come for both you and Tom in your life, where you really didn't have a lot beforehand? You had some, you were working or he was working, but it wasn't like the amount of wealth that you guys created with Quest and Impact Theory and everything you guys have built together. How did the accumulation of wealth change your beliefs about yourself?
Oh, that's such a big question. That's such a good question, Lewis. Okay.
You went from an apartment, I'm assuming, to a house, to a bigger house, to number in your bank account going way up, to being able to buy things now, lots of great things.
Yeah.
How did that shift?
So I really thought, when we're successful, when we're rich, I'm going to feel like everything's going to be okay. Because you look at successful, wealthy people and you're like, at least for me, can't speak for other people, I admire them. Like, oh my God, look at that watch. Like, look at that thing, right? Like, oh my God. I'm going to feel great when I have it. So because you think that about that person, you think that's how you're going to feel when you get there. So I'm going to take you back. Quest is announced as $1 billion company, but we all know until you actually make any sales,
you don't make any money.
You literally don't make any money.
You're just getting a salary and some bonuses.
Yeah. Tom and I were still sharing the same Ford Focus with a hole in the exhaust when Quest was announced as $1 billion company. So everyone thinks you're wealthy, but we literally had, Tom's salary and that was it. So we go to sell a very small portion of Quest. And so these things take months and months and months.
How much did you guys, what was the percentage?
I think it was like 9% at the beginning.
That you guys had total?
That we sold. So
gotcha.
So there's 3 business partners, Tom and then the other.
So they split it 3 ways, essentially.
Yes, exactly. So we split like 9% or something,
Gotcha.
like 11%. I can't remember how much. This was a while ago. So it's a small percent, so you're still taking massive ownership over it, but it was still a hell of a lot of money.
Absolutely.
So now that sort of thing takes months and months and months. So we didn't want to talk about it. We didn't tell anybody that we were trying to sell a bit because you never know what's going to happen. So one day we hear rumors that today is going to be the day.
That the money comes in.
Yes.
Like there's a wire transfer of this much money.
Yes, our Ford Focus is still sitting in the drive.
Right.
And we hear these rumors from our finances that the money's about to come in. So we're working in our makeshift garage gym. And in between reps, Tom's like, all right, babe, refresh. No, nothing yet.
Oh,
so we're like,
man.
going to do it, refresh. And literally one button, refresh, boom, your life changes.
Wow.
And in that moment, I was like, oh my God. And so we hugged, we took a couple of selfies. And then what did we do, Lewis? We got back up and went back to work.
Yeah.
And in that moment, because the first of all, I was like, babe, where are you going? Yeah, we're going to celebrate. He goes, we've got to get back to work. Our mission isn't done. And I was like, you're right. And in that moment, it was such a beautiful realization. Because we had a mission, so we were chasing money. We said, stop chasing money. Now let's chase something that's actually predicated on passion, desire, and value add. That was Quest Nutrition. So we flipped our mindsets. We stopped chasing money. And in the effort of stop chasing money, it led to us creating money. But because we'd already developed a mission, we'd already developed our why, we knew why we were getting out of bed every day, that didn't change just because our bank account did. Now look, I'm not going to pretend. It was amazing, right? Ford, we didn't tell anybody, and about 2 days later or something, we went shopping. And it was like...
Get whatever you want, yes.
So it was like, that's amazing. I'm never going to BS anyone. It was a dream come true. It was wonderful. But it didn't change how I felt about myself. It didn't change my mission.
Did you believe you were deserving and worthy of the money?
I don't really think like that. I don't really know what that means because when it says deserving, there are people out there that have a harder life than I do, that work harder to provide for their family than I do. So it's hard for me to say deserve. We work freaking hard for it. We sacrificed. So do I think that it was, well placed maybe? Sure. It's hard for me to kind of answer that. It really did become when you get what you think you want, when you go to bed at night, how do you feel about yourself? And it was the same. It was just in more expensive bed sheets.
Right.
And
the nicer car.
Yeah. The negative voice is still there. The person saying that you're not good is still there. The imposter syndrome is still there. It's just in a nicer house.
So you still felt like an imposter?
Oh my God, of course. Yeah.
What was the imposter
I still felt
voice?
like I was helping my husband out.
What year was this?
2015.
Okay, so about 7 years ago.
Yeah. So
what was the voice in your head at that time? When this massive number hits the bank account, what is that imposter voice saying to you?
Even though at this point I had, I was had 40 employees underneath me, 10,000 square foot, literally went from shipping bars on my living room floor to that. And then imposter syndrome is that my husband and his business partners earned the money, and I was a good help.
So that's what you were saying to yourself. Gotcha.
Yeah. And so even that took work and, internal work and, what value do you bring to the table just because your name isn't on that piece of paper as a founder, because those three were, it's like you've brought, to really coach myself through, but you've sacrificed, you've given every hour of every day. Literally, I was working 12, 13 hours a day. So to really believe in myself that I had earned that was very hard, but it was important for me to do. And then the idea of in the grind, when things are hard and you're asking yourself, what the hell are we doing this all for? Like, why? Tom and I would drive around Beverly Hills in our crappy car and we would point out all the houses we would buy. And we were like, I like this style. No, I like this style. And then eventually the money comes to our account and we actually can buy the house that we're the roads that we're touring. So it's like the biggest dream come true. And in that moment, it was like I wanted a waterfall. So I'm a 90s chick. I love hip hop and I love 90s. And so I was always joking, but really serious. I was like, babe, I want to do our own version of a 90s hip hop music video. I want a waterfall. I want Dom Perignon bottle. I want to pour it down me in a sexy outfit. I want you to film me. That was the dream. I have to emotionally tie to a dream. It can't just be a house. It has to be the feeling of getting the house. So I had this vision. We finally get the house. It finally has a freaking waterfall, dude. We get the keys. We got a bottle of Dom Perignon. Tom's got a photo. He's taking a photo of me. I'm taking a swig of the champagne. And that was the moment my health and my gut felt like it, obviously I've had health issues. That was the moment.
Really?
That same moment that we were celebrating the biggest achievement of our lives.
Really?
It's so cliche.
Why was that the moment, do you think?
So I think I'd had 15 years of gut issues. I was ignoring them. I was priding myself on the grind. I wasn't priding myself on the self-care. So for years and years, I was getting sicker and sicker because I wasn't replenishing my gut. I had a very unhealthy relationship with food. So I wasn't having fat. I wasn't eating carbs. I thought I had to be as skinny as possible. So all this unhealthy relationship, I was getting sick because I was working a lot. I wasn't replenishing. And so I was getting a lot of antibiotics. And so for years and years and years, I was taking 3 to 4, 5 times a year antibiotics.
Wow.
And I really think it got to the point where I'd pushed myself into the ground and the bubbly and the alcohol, I think it was just that moment.
Wow.
And I think, and it literally, from them, it felt like it erupted. I didn't tell Tom because, of course, I'm trying to be strong.
Sure.
So I'm like, babe, I'll be back in a second. I run to the bathroom and I literally cannot get, I'm like, what the hell is happening to me? My gut is in such disarray. But my husband's so excited for it. So of course, what do I tell myself? Just push through it.
Right.
Don't tell him, push through it. It's a celebration. And I was like, all right, if I just get straight into the swimming pool, then I'll be able to hide my pain.
Oh, man.
So I get out, I'm trying to pretend I'm rushing into the swimming pool, and just the water pressure was too unbearable.
Ooh.
And that's when I'm like, babe, I don't know what's wrong. That was 6 years ago.
Wow.
6 years ago. I'm still on my journey of healing my gut.
Wow.
Just to give perspective to everybody.
Wow.
For a whole year, I couldn't eat more than 4 or 5 ingredients. It was beef, salt, coconut oil and chicken. I was 20 pounds lighter than I am now.
Wow.
My hair was falling out. My nails were brittle. And you want to talk about my relationship with my husband? I started feeling like I wasn't sexy. I could barely hug him, let alone any intimacy. You got to understand what that does to a woman's emotions, how I felt about myself. Tom was so supportive, but I felt like I wasn't bringing, beauty to our relationship. That was me, that wasn't him. Sex was out the window. And it was like I couldn't even stand up at 5 minutes at a time. And on the outside, we had just literally were celebrating Quest being $1 billion company and one of the most fastest growing nutrition companies in the world. And here I am. I can't even eat. I pretended I didn't tell anybody. For months, I didn't tell anyone. So sorry, I know that was a long story, but really going back to your point of, I remember the day that my success changed. And that was the most beautiful lesson if I can look back, right? We think it was Tony Robbins, but I use this all the time. How can I make the most horrific thing be the best thing that's ever happened to me?
Yeah.
In that moment, I was tested.
Giving it meaning, yeah.
Yeah. And in that moment, I was tested. And it was like, you can't, like I said, I'm still struggling 6 years later. But how can that moment be the best thing that's ever happened to me? Number one, I took ownership. I did it to my gut. I was the one that had a bad relationship with food. I was the one that was taking the antibiotics. And for so long, I was like, it's the doctor's fault. It's the expert's fault. It's that person's fault. Taking ownership over my health changed everything, not just for my health, but in the way that I see business, in the way that I see my relationship. Now, every time something goes wrong, the very first thing I ask myself is, how can I take ownership over this? How was this my own doing? So that changed my whole health. That changed my business. Every time now something goes wrong in the business, whether it's an employee that has royally screwed up, I literally, before I say anything, it's like, what's my ownership in this?
Yeah. I know that feeling.
And so that just changed everything. And then it also changed my idea of success. It really did. And so when thank God, I don't know how I would think about success if that hadn't happened to me. I don't know how I would think about money if that didn't happen to me.
How do you think about it now?
I don't give a shit. I love it, of course. It allows me to create content, right? It allows me to impact people. It allows me to do all the things that I do every day. If ever I was coming into conflict with my relationship, I wouldn't think twice about it. If ever it was come into conflict of me feeling good about myself, I wouldn't think about it. That's what I mean by it doesn't dictate who I am and how I show up every day. It is an amazing facilitator. Amazing. And I'm such an advocate for wealth creation. I think it's BS. People are like, no, it can do beautiful things. It really can. So I'm not going to BS anyone. But money in and of itself is like a superpower. You can use it for good or you can use it for evil. It's your choice.
Right.
And so for me, it's so beautiful because I'm able to create beautiful things out of it. But it doesn't have a reflection of how I feel about myself, who I am and how I show up every day. And I don't know if it would have. It may have done that if my gut didn't fall apart.
Interesting.
Don't count the number of times you've been knocked down. Get attached to the number of times you get up.
All right.
Like-
I'm going to get these truth bombs all day.
Right. Boom, 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 boom.
I love it. I'm curious now because you didn't start out, with a lot of money and with a lot of abundance mindset, did you?
Right. It wasn't just not a lot of money. It's one thing to be fiscally broke. It's another thing to be emotionally broken. Two very different things. Right. And I was broke and broken. And in 1994, I had to go get on government's assistance just to feed my newborn baby. I had to get on WIC, Women, Infant, and Children. And I still say it, and I say it often. I was interviewed 155 times in 5 months for my previous book, No Matter What, and it still hits me in the same place. I was ashamed to stand in line with all the other mothers, some fathers, to get free butter, free cheese, free milk, free pasta. But at the same time, I was grateful that there was such a service to help people like me that I knew this wasn't where I was going to stay.
Right.
But it was where I was in that moment. I wasn't committed to take up real estate there, but it was my current address, and broken. It kind of hit I felt like I hit the bottom. Sometimes you feel you're back on the bottom, like, I think That's the bottom, right? My
And then
son-
there's always a deeper.
yeah,
bottom.
right. So when I was getting food stamps, I thought I was at the bottom, and then
You went even
boom,
deeper.
boom, right. I went to the ATM. I ran out of Pampers for my son Jelani, and I went to the ATM to get money to go buy Pampers, and it said insufficient funds, and I had $11.42 in the bank.
What's the minimum? You can take out $20 in an ATM.
Exactly. You
something
need
like that?
20 in to get 20 out.
Wow.
And I had $11.42. And so I went home and I had to wrap my son Jelani for 2 days in a series of different towels. That was my rock bottom. And that was because as a parent, all you want to do is provide. That's it. It's simple. I just want to provide safety and food for my baby. Somebody else was providing my food and I didn't even have Pampers. And I remember on the second day of wrapping my son in a towel, Lewis, I put my hand over his stomach and I said, "Don't worry, Jelani," with tears streaming down my face. I said, "Don't worry, son. Mommy will never, ever be this broke again." And so you talk about having financial resources. I realized that I needed to first believe that I could do something different, that wherever my mindset was, my bank account was going to follow. So I needed to change my mental zip code.
What was your mental zip code then?
Scarcity, lack. I was born and raised in South Central LA. I grew up between the Harlem Crip 30s and the Rolling 60s. I had 3 fights a week to get home from school. My highest grade in school was a C+. In 12 years of school, my highest grade was a C+. And so if you ever tell this story to anybody, don't forget my plus. Y'all don't forget my plus. It's very important to a C student,
Of
A
course.
student.
I was a C and D
Right,
student
right.
myself, so I
So
get it.
to an A student, it doesn't matter. Like plus, whatever.
get
But
it.
to a C student, the plus matters, man.
I get it.
So I struggled. Everything in my life was about a hustle. Everything. Nothing was easy, except the love for my family. That was easy and effortless and graceful and bountiful. But everything else outside of that, it was a hustle, get or get God. It was the environment I grew up in. And I'm not saying that you have to grow up in that rough environment to have an amazing future. People always say, well, Lisa, I didn't have it rough. Could I have a... Listen, I would have traded my background in for anybody.
Right.
Don't think I chose that so I can have this. And so I didn't know abundance. I didn't know abundance existed. I didn't know abundance could happen to people who look like me. A woman, geographically, from my neighborhood, I didn't know abundance can be that. I didn't see it around me. I didn't know abundance can be for someone that was in my culture. Everything was about survival and hustle. So so many things. And spiritually, I didn't know that someone who loved God, who had a spiritual foundation, can also have prosperity without being perceived as greedy. I mean, everything in my environment said not me. Everything said not me. If I listened to the sound effects.
Right.
And sometimes you just got to turn the volume down and
Sure.
listen to your heart.
Right. So what was the conversation you would tell yourself during this time when you're in this scarce zip code?
Someone like me can't have it. Them over there, that guy right there, he comes from the right family.
Right.
That girl right there, her skin color's the right complexion. That I'm full figured, a mocha skin, full lips, round hip, kinky hair girl. Nah, not me. No. I get other things. I get a bountiful family. I get great children if I want. I get closeness to God, but I don't get abundance. And I realized that so much of that conversation was embedded in me before I was 5. I mean, it just comes with the territory.
Right.
I would watch my grandmother make a dime go in 20 different directions, and I never wondered about having 21 dimes. I just wanted to grow up and make my dime go in 20 different directions to be like grandma. And so much is culturally inherited, gender inherited. As a gender, as a woman, you're not raised to make millions. You're raised to either get a good job or get a man with a good job,
Right.
And
Especially in the 80s and 90s.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely. And that's how we were raised. Spiritually, you're taught, in my background, my religious background, now I'm spiritual. I'm not attached to a religion at all. But growing up in the Mount Tabor Missionary Baptist Church, it was, money is the root of all evil. Well, who
Yeah.
would want a lot of that? And that good
Who
people.
wants evil?
Exactly. Who wants evil? And if that's what you say, then I learned that I don't need it. And Sister Brown, I watched Sister Brown, and Sister Brown was the most godly woman in the church. And she was always selling fish dinners and barbecue dinners to make sure she had enough money. And so unconsciously, I wanted to be like Sister Brown because that woman can pray the heavens down. And so then again, I'm looking at that. And then in my neighborhood, it was the moment you get a little extra, you give it away. You give it away. Still to this day, I kid you not. One of my last opportunities, I don't call them challenges, opportunities, is I'm in the top 1% earners in America. And I say that humbly, I'm grateful. And my job now is to learn how to keep it and grow it because I love to give it away. And I know it's a learned behavior. It's a learned, and I give it away to good things. I just put $82,000 and revamped my grandmother's whole house because I knew she wasn't gonna move. She gonna live. That's where she's gonna rest in peace. She's gonna stay right there. She's been at that house since 1968. She's not going anywhere. So I just redid the entire house, gutted out the entire house, and spent close to $100,000 doing it. And I'll do that over and over and over and over again because I also was taught, give it away. So now I'm going to people who are more powerful in money in terms of I know how to make a lot. I know how to keep a lot. Now I learn how to grow a lot. You know, and being willing and being humble enough to say that's where I am. I got the first two down because money is 3 levels. How do you earn it? How do you keep it? And how do you grow it? And so, you know, I had a conversation for a long time in many different ways. And then it's the conversation as a woman, if I make so much, it's going to be hard to be dateable. That big D word, you know, and so as an African American,
you're unapproachable now.
Exactly. And men are taught, as I'm taught as a woman about money, you're taught as a man, be the provider. Well, you know, it's kind of hard to provide for a G like me. You know, when I come in, I go, how about we just put it together? Because I'm kind of cool on the provision thing, you know, and so I realize that men have to also feel comfortable with the fact that that's an 80s conversation. And in 2015, she might make
2016
millions.
now.
Right, 2016, right,
You're
right.
on the book tour, you're still last year.
I started the book tour, and I have you have to, at every moment, tell me the date that we're living inside of right now.
I feel you.
Right, you know, I'm just
recovering.
Right.
I'm finally just like.
Tell me there's something on the other side. Recovery is true, right?
There's a clear voice. There's sanity.
I'm not seeing doubles,
right. There's a healthy body again.
Right, amen.
There's your freedom of time. So I'm curious, what was this moment then that you realized, okay, I need to shift the way I'm thinking, the conversations I'm having, how I'm showing up, who I'm being in every moment, from living in this scarce environment that I've lived in for 20-something years to all of a sudden shifting into an abundance mindset and way of being. What was the moment you experienced, the thought, the idea, the catalyst that broke that?
I like how you say a moment. Like I got the ceiling opened up and the lights came in and the angels came. No.
Maybe it was over time.
Right. There was a moment when suffering became too painful.
There you go.
So mine didn't necessarily come in a glory moment. It came with $11.42 and watching my baby wrapped in a towel. A towel, I felt like I was being unfair to him. See, because 30 days before the towel, I'm really telling my stuff, 30 days before the towel, his father called me, and when I answered the phone, I never forget, I said, hello? He said, Lisa, I'm in LA County Jail. Well, I don't do jail, and I don't do people in jail, and I don't do people who have a possibility of going. So how did you get there? Because I met you in corporate America, and you were a professional. How you got there is his business. I don't know. But now I'm a single mom of a son whose father's now in prison. Boom, boom, rock bottom again. So 30 days later, when I had my son wrapped in a towel, I was done. I was just done.
You're sick and tired of being sick and tired.
I was done. So, you know, the concept of bankrupt is there's nothing left. That's the concept of bankrupt. So I like to explain it. I was bankrupt in my mess. I was bankrupt in my chaos. And I was bankrupt in every sexy, because my excuses are sexy, by the way. I've been a linguistic specialist for years. I could talk my teachers into doing things right. I mean, that's just been my gift. My father used to say, Lisa, please promise me you will use your powers for good. And so I was bankrupt in all of my excuses. So if you ask when, it was probably about 3 hours after I told my son we'll never be here again on day 2 of being wrapped in a towel in 1994. And then I said, how? The next question was how? If I'm done with this, I'm not even sure what that looks like. I just know over there are a bunch of abundant thinkers living an abundant life, having abundant memories, with a surplus of everything you need. Because abundance is to be an overflow of the things that you have. Abundance is just about overflow. It's about overflow. That means that if there were a saucer under this cup, abundance would be everything. This tea flows over into the saucer, and I can feed you from my saucer because I have filled my cup up enough. I use my cup for me, and I feed you from my saucer. And abundance is saying I have a saucer in my relationships filled with great experiences. There's a saucer in my health and wellness. I have so much bountiful health and vitality that I can show up for you. There's a saucer with my spirituality that I can pray for you. I can forgive the perceivingly unforgivable and love the perceivingly unlovable. And then there's a saucer for my finances. And that in every area, because abundance is a 360 experience. See, wealth is singularly focused. Wealth is about your money and your possessions. That's wealth. Okay. But abundance is 360. I have a lot of very, very wealthy friends
who are miserable, unhappy,
who are
bad
not abundant.
Yeah.
Who are not abundant. They're
Think
wealthy.
Scarcity. Yeah.
They're wealthy. They're not abundant. And they understand that. And they come to me and go, Lisa, help me with my relationships with my family or whatever.
Right.
And so I had to learn something different. Louis, I didn't know what I didn't know. And so that became the moment when I said, what do I need to know to have something different? What do they know that I don't know? And how can I get it? And I became a hunter.
So what was the first discovery?
That there's a mindset that comes with abundance, that they think differently. They don't just do something different. There's not a hookup. First of all, what camera do I look into? Is it that one?
Anyone.
There is no such thing as a hookup. I am still waiting on mine. And if you know where it is, my phone number is. So there's no hookup.
Yeah.
There's no hookup. Like, it's not true. Like, you got a 297 million chance in one to win the lotto. And within 5 years, the people win the lotto are in more debt than they were before they won the lotto. So that ain't even a hookup, right?
Yeah.
And so I realized that I needed to change my mindset. I needed to learn something different. And I needed to know it at a cellular level. All that stuff I just told you about, my color, my gender, I had to unlearn. People we're information junkies because we got all kind of access to information online.
Yeah.
And we're learning all this stuff, but we're not implementing anything. I'm sorry, I might step on a few toes. That's what I do. And so I realized that I had to, at a cellular level, first, before I went to get any more information, I had to be willing to divorce and evict some belief systems that I already had. That they had taken me as far as they can take me, and now they're holding me back. It's almost like you wear a size 11, you have 11 foot, and you tried to fit it back in a size 7 shoe. You passed that a long time ago, and that's going to be a very uncomfortable day. I was in discomfort.
Right.
I was very uncomfortable with my thinking. And so I started diving into books. The first book I dove into was Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People, and it disrupted me. It disrupted everything. I didn't know. It was like a double door opened up, and then a wall opened up. And I'm like, what are they know that? Like, why nobody told me that? Like, I felt like I was out of a club. And really you are. I'm just going to tell you, abundant thinkers think a certain way. And they don't go around trying to convert you. Like, people like you and I go, let's open it up to everyone.
Yeah.
But here's what I know about the human spirit. Is that the human spirit has a power of choice. And most people don't want to choose this kind of thinking because it costs you something. It costs
What's the
you.
cost?
The cost is you got to get up earlier. You get up earlier than the average guy. Your day, what you do in a day is what some people do in a week. What you do in the mornings is what some people do in a 12-hour day. You got to be willing. What you're willing to do on your book tour to get on the New York Times, some people say, I got to do all that. I don't want to do all that.
It's a lot of work.
Okay, great. Then have your life. Like, you sign up for your life experience. There's no way. Like, when I realized that I was a culmination of all my decisions, that's like straight with no chaser. That's like getting it with no cookies and milk. I was you're a culmination of all your decisions. And then when you up-level your decisions, and now that's even hard at times when you go, God, why am I always single? You're a culmination of your decisions. You're a culmination of your actions. Why can't I keep any money? You're a culmination of your decisions, your life. So I wanted to make better decisions because my son being wrapped in a towel, me having $11.42, me being overweight, my son's father being in prison. I couldn't shake it. I was a culmination. My life experience was a culmination of all my decisions. And it was undoubtedly a hot mess. And so I went, well, let me go learn from somebody whose life don't seem like it's a hot mess. And then let me adopt some of their behaviors. And I began to hunt. I went to conferences. I was scared the bejeebies out of me, these conferences. I'd never been to conferences before. I went to entrepreneurial conferences. I was one of 4 women at an 800-person conference, and I was the only woman of color. So it was all older white men and me. And I was like, okay, well, they're not afraid of money, seems like. They're talking money and business and corporations and ROIs and PPMs and term agreements and no habla español. I don't know what that means, but I am not leaving until I figure this out.
Right.
And I went to the same conference. When I say do what other people won't do, and you'll have what other people don't have, I went to the same conference, Louis, 42 times. I told you I was a C student, so it took me a minute to get it. And I kept getting sponsored back to I didn't even have the money to go to the conference. I started volunteering at the conference. I would be on stage teaching because they loved the way I spoke. Then I'd get off and I'd help clean up because I had to pay my dues to be there. I was okay. I ate my slice of humble pie every day because I was bankrupt. See, some people, you haven't pushed non-negotiable yet. You're still optional. I really would love to be successful. And so
I want to be successful.
I want to be successful.
I want to make money.
I want to make money.
Be healthy.
I want to be healthy, but it's not non-negotiable yet because the moment the rubber meets the road and you feel a little skin and it gets a little tender and a little blood may show up and you don't want to give blood, you don't want to give sweat, you don't want to give tears. Let me just tell you, you can't take the elevator to the top.
Right.
It ain't nothing but stairs.
Right.
What has been the biggest struggle then for you mentally and emotionally in the last couple of years?
The biggest struggle is trying to ascend to the mountaintop. And the reason I say that, bro, is
to get to the mountaintop?
Yes. Trying to
What
climb.
is the mountaintop?
I think the mountaintop is different for everyone.
Is that a goal?
For me, the mountaintop is checking boxes.
Okay.
Right? Like, it's checking boxes.
Give me an example.
An example. Okay, great. Now I host my own show on sports. Speak for yourself. Check. Oh, okay, great. Now I've partnered with Oprah on a book. Oh, another book. Oh, a third book.
Yeah.
Check. Okay, but the book has to best-sell. Check. It's just like, it's just trying to ascend, trying to do, and not being dejected when you don't. And then, bro, I also think trying to figure out our place on this earth.
Yeah.
I think we're all trying to do that. When we remove the masks and the makeup, figuratively speaking, of our life, we're all trying to figure out what value am I providing to the people I'm interacting with?
Yeah.
What value am I providing to society? Where is my place in life? And I've been constantly, my biggest struggle the last couple years is trying to really figure that out. And now that it appears I figured that out, trying to sustain the heat, and the hate that comes with that.
The heat and the hate, huh? Because I don't think people understand that once you have audience and attention, there will be heat and hate. No matter how pure your intentions are, no matter how kind you try to be, there'll be hate.
But you know what I've realized, man, and my co-host Marcellus Wiley says this: criticism is the cost of praise.
It is.
We don't realize that enough. Like recently, for those watching sports news, Naomi Osaka, #1 tennis player in the world just a couple years ago, she tried to stop a tennis match because somebody said you suck. Somebody yelled you suck, and she went to the judge and went to the ump and was like, yo, can we stop the match? Like, can we get them kicked out?
Is this recently?
Recently.
I didn't see this.
2 days ago.
Wow. She tried to stop the match and say, kick that person out.
Correct. And at the end of the post-game presser, tears came into her eyes for different reasons. And I was just like, criticism is the cost of praise. And
if you don't want criticism, don't play the game.
It's like you don't have a choice.
Don't play. Don't show up.
You can't play if you don't want criticism.
Yeah.
It's not even like you were advising don't. It's like, yo, criticism comes with it.
Here's the funny thing, not to cut you off, is that you're going to be criticized at the top or criticized for doing nothing. So you might as well do something you enjoy. Because if you're sitting on the couch and you have all this potential, but you don't do something, the people closest to you are to say, what are you doing?
Yeah.
This person has so much potential. Give me their potential.
Yeah.
I could do something great with this, but they're just sitting on their couch depressed, worried about people's thoughts or opinions. There's a price either way.
You got to pay it either way.
You got to pay it either way. Maybe it's greater price as you're climbing and dealing with the more attention, but there's a price either way.
You know what else, man? And I've realized this too, and it's hit me in the face. You can't call for attention and hang up.
Yeah, someone look at me. Oh, but only say nice things about me.
You can't. And whether we intentionally call for attention or we don't, you can't call for attention and hang up. Like the boy who cried wolf, like us in our friend groups. like a child in a house cries and cries. Mother asks, what's wrong? Father asks, what's wrong? Nothing. And what are you crying for?
Right.
You can't call for attention and hang up. And so I think there's just a lot of learning and discovering that I'm doing on this journey.
Yeah. The emotional regulation is funny. I was just interviewing a neuroscientist / brain surgeon. He's an expert in both areas. So he studies the brain and the mind, right? The thoughts. And after this 2-hour conversation, the whole thing came down to the number one skill to have is the ability to emotionally regulate your feelings and how thoughts, the brain, and the mind are connected to feelings and the ability to emotionally regulate them. Not saying that you're not going to have wide range of emotions, but the ability to regulate under pressure, under stress, so that you can get into flow, that you can get back to your mission, your vision, and not be in chaos mode. You know, you can defend yourself rationally, essentially, in times of chaos. And he said that's kind of what it comes down to. If I could teach a skill, it'd be the skill of emotional regulation. And I think the farther we try to strive to unlock our potential, the more we need to learn that, because the more people are going to be coming at us, it sounds like.
Yeah. Yeah. One, I think that's a phenomenal thought. I think it was Michael Jordan's trainer who said emotions are dangerous, but controlled anger or controlled aggression is like the most
dangerous of all. Yeah.
Yes.
Is that Tim Grover?
Yes,
Tim
Grover.
He's great.
It's like the most dangerous of all.
Yeah, because being emotional and reacting, you're going to foul out. You're going to do something stupid.
Correct.
Which I did many times in multiple sports. And then you learn the lesson, oh, my emotional reaction gets me on the bench or hurts my team.
And you know what's interesting? We're talking sports, but this is a life conversation.
Man. Yeah, it's life.
Because while you can say foul out literally, figuratively speaking, if you're at the grocery store and then you get upset and then you get emotional and then you get into it with the cashier, emotionally fouling out. If you're talking to a friend and then you get into it with your friend and then you say something you shouldn't have, emotionally fouling out, relationship oriented. If you're talking to somebody and you're dating and then you get into it. So we're talking a sports conversation, but it is the controlling of your mind. But to me, bro, everything starts with the mind.
Yeah.
Both our greatest limitations and our greatest accomplishments. To me, it's all up here.
Absolutely. Well, what has been the biggest, you talked about living a life without failure or fear of failure.
Living a life without failure.
What is the biggest fear for you in the last couple of years then? And now that you've, let's call it broken through, right? You were already really successful. I mean, you're an NFL player and had a career in sports TV and all these things, but broken through to a different level. What is now the greatest fear?
Ooh. That's why I like talking to you.
Hey, man.
That's why I like talking to you. My biggest fear is becoming complacent. My biggest fear is not realizing I'm living inside of a box that is around me. My biggest fear is not realizing, hey, there's a door you haven't yet opened, and what you think is a world is actually just a locker that you are inside of. One of my favorite scenes of any movie, it's the end of Men in Black. I believe it's Men in Black 1. And at the end of the movie, they open up a locker and they realize there's an entire another world out there. They thought they were living in their world, but there's such a bigger world out there. And my greatest fear is not pushing beyond a boundary because I don't even realize the boundary is set because I didn't set it, because somebody else set it. And I've been living inside of somebody else's box or somebody else's boundary. The reason we don't achieve our highest highs, bro, isn't because we're not skilled. It isn't because we're not talented. It isn't even necessarily because we don't want it. It's because we don't realize how high we could achieve.
Right.
I think that's the biggest limiting reactant of realizing our highs. One of my favorite stories, if not my favorite story of Roger Bannister.
4 Minute Mile.
4 Minute Mile. For those that aren't familiar, Roger Bannister, scientists believed it was physically impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. Quick history lesson for everybody. That's my favorite story. Scientists believe it's physically impossible to run a mile in under 4 minutes. May 5th, 1952, it had never been done in 2,000 years, but by May 6th, Roger Bannister, Oxford, England, runs a mile, 3 minutes, 59 seconds. Within 2 years, 10 people ran a mile in under 4 minutes. Now, the world record for the mile, 3 minutes, 43 seconds, and roughly 1,800 people have done so. Why? Because one man, Roger Bannister, removed the barriers that other people set around him. One man said, you know what? I'm not going to subscribe to that barrier. One man said, I'm not going to subscribe to goals. One man said, I'm not going to subscribe to that. And he broke the dam open for everybody. And after that dam was broken for everybody, the whole rest of the running world proceeded to run through it. So my biggest fear, bro, is living inside of a box that somebody else set before me.
So if you don't have goals to break or reach, what are you reaching for? Like, what's beyond a barrier that you're not trying to accomplish?
For me, I'm reaching for movement.
Okay.
That's all it is. I'm reaching for progress. I'm moving forward. I'm moving forward.
So it's not reaching an end goal.
No, it's moving.
Yes.
It's moving forward, man. Like you're going to do another episode tomorrow, and hopefully it's better than today, and then the next tomorrow, and hopefully it's better than that day, and then you're just going to keep moving. Like, let's not get so bogged down by, but I didn't get this. Oh, but I got that. Just keep moving forward. When you go to a beach and you end up standing in the ocean, eventually after about 5 minutes, you'll look back and be like, yo, I done drifted way far away. And you just drifted further than you ever thought. That's where I'm at now. Let's keep moving forward.
Yeah.
We get so caught up in, I want to be married by 26,
Yes.
and I want to have 2 kids, and I want to have bought my first home by 29, and by 35 I want to be done having kids, and I want to have 4 kids, 2 boys, 2 girls, preferably twins, because that would be easiest.
Yes.
Bump all that.
Yeah.
Forget all that goal setting. Goals lead to failure. I want to live the most impactful and significant life I can possibly live. And if I happen to live that life with somebody else, great. And if I don't, great. And at 35, I want to see where I am. And at 30, I want to see where I am. And I want to just continue to move forward and make progress as a human being. But at the end of the day, bro, the reason we have these goals isn't even because of us. It's because of other people. This blew my mind. And you're a sports guy, so this might blow yours as well. This truly blew my mind. We often debate LeBron James, Michael Jordan, greatest basketball player of all time. Who do you say, sir?
I mean, I'm from Ohio, so I go for LeBron.
Go for LeBron.
I just saw LeBron last night too play, so.
I
mean, he's still playing at what? He's
at the highest level. Dude's 37 years old, baller.
He just had 10,000 rebounds, 10,000 points, and 10,000 assists.
Beast. Let me blow this Michael Jordan, LeBron James debate open for a second.
Yes.
For those that claim Jordan's the greatest basketball player ever, they claim it primarily for this reason. He went to 6 NBA championships and he won 6. But outside of those 6 NBA championships, Jordan never went back to an NBA Finals. He went 6 times and he won all 6 times. LeBron, on the other hand, has gone 10 times and he's only won 4.
He's more like Tom Brady. You know,
gone 10, won 4, Jordan went 6, won 6 times. Okay, great. Now let's talk about the same exact sport, basketball. Let's talk about the same exact result, first place and or second place, Jordan and LeBron. But now let's talk about a different measuring system, a different metric system, the Olympic Games. In the Olympic Games, Michael Jordan would have 6 golds, no silvers. LeBron would have 4 golds and 6 silvers. On an Olympic scale, 4 golds and 6 silvers is abundantly and clearly greater than 6 golds. But in the NBA scale, 6 golds is better.
Right.
So the question simply comes down to, whose metric system are you using?
Right.
And the problem is, we let other people's metric systems dictate the happiness in our life. Because in the NBA, you finish in second, you leave the court crying and weeping, devastated. The Olympic Games, you finish in second. To a degree, you're elated, depending on what country.
Right.
Why? Because somebody else dictated how we should feel about a certain situation based upon their metric system, not even our own.
Absolutely.
And I'm just done subscribing to other people's metric systems.
I go to the Olympics, that's an accomplishment. I go to the Olympics and get a bronze, I'm like, I medaled, you know. It's
I'm one of the 3 best in the world
exactly.
at what I do.
Exactly.
But in the NBA, you get 3rd. In the NFL, you finish in 3rd. In the MLB, you finish in 3rd or 4th. You're like, you're petrified. You're distraught.
Exactly.
And I realized, bro, we just subscribe to other people's metric systems.
Yeah.
And we let it dictate our happiness.
Now tell me, okay, I love this approach. I love the philosophy and the mindset. But for someone watching or listening who's like, okay, but I really want to accomplish some goals to feel like I'm accomplishing something
Right.
because I want it to build because it's always built my confidence when I do accomplish. But I hear you say, but if you don't accomplish this, they're going to hurt your self-esteem. So how do we, if someone's like, I want to write a book this year.
Right.
Do I set a goal to write a book, or is it a journey of writing the book?
Right.
Do I create micro goals on a
Yep.
weekly basis and have accountability? There's going to be deadlines. Or, how do we think about the process of like completing a project, launching something we want to launch, doing our artwork, creating our music, whatever it might be? How do we then set these things and make them happen?
Right. So I got my master's in sports psychology, and I dedicated my final thesis paper, if you will, for my master's degree to this concept. I elaborate and expound on this concept in a logical, but I will give you a snippet. Because I studied goals so long, I understand there is a use for goals. When you are talking about the micro in order to accomplish something, there is a use for goals. In a relay race, to stick in Olympic sport of track and field, it does not matter how fast we run if we do not get the baton around.
Right.
So the micro goal needs to be to get the baton around. When I say don't set goals, have an objective with no limitations, I'm talking about a larger principle of life.
Yes.
When you're talking about macro things such as, hey, I just want to write a book, right? In the macro of writing a book, sure. So I want to finish a chapter on Monday, and I want to write a chapter every week, every Monday. If you have a employer who's like, hey, we need this done by this date. Well, within that stance, there is a means to set a goal. You talked about talking to the neuroscientist. You mentioned this pivotal word, flow. In order to achieve flow is simply when you no longer are conscious of time in the midst of a task. In order to achieve flow, you need automatic feedback, autonomous feedback. In order to get that feedback, you need to set goals.
Yes.
So there are principles, objectives in life within micro constructs where goals have value. I'm talking about the macro look of life, where goals will do more damage than they will
see what you're
success.
saying, yeah.
Or at least goals will just be a limiting reactant.
Gotcha.
Because I always think, what if Roger Bannister wasn't just trying to break the 4-minute mile? How much faster could he have gone? You never know. He went 3:59.8. He broke it barely. There's literally 0.2 of a second was the difference. How much faster could he have gone? Maybe no faster, but maybe. If my goal, Lewis, was to write a book, I would have wrote a book. I wouldn't have wrote the second one, and I might not have written the third one. So that's where I'm thinking, like, bigger picture, I just want to see people be the best version of themselves.
So how do we, people are going to fail, but you're saying to reframe failure or to not even look at failure as an option? Because if you don't set the goal, you can't fail in that sense.
Bingo. I thought about this the other time. I don't think people fail. What I say is this, and I thought about this. I didn't fail, I fell. And as long as I get up, I win.
Ooh, yeah. Like a child. A child falls hundreds and thousands of times, and they never think to themselves, maybe this walking thing isn't for me.
Dude.
They fall, and they get up.
We didn't fail. We fell. As long as you get up, you win. The winning isn't getting up. So many people think they failed. They didn't fail.
They stopped.
You stopped.
Yeah.
You didn't fail. You just fell.
And you just never got up.
That's it. A relationship didn't work. You didn't fail at that relationship. And then you didn't fail in that relationship. Job, you got fired. You didn't fail. You fell. Get up. You'll look back. You win as long as you get up. Right. So when people keep talking about failure, I don't subscribe to that, but I don't subscribe to goals because ultimately to fail is to put a period where a comma belongs. I ain't doing that no more, big dog.
Or a dot.
Exactly.
To be continued.
I ain't putting periods where commas belong anymore. Yeah. And then we do that too often in our life. It's like, this relationship ended, period. No, this relationship ended. I found somebody who was more suitable for me, who I am more suitable for, and I now ended up significantly happier than I was.
That's a good way to look at it. I feel like it took me a long time to learn how to walk in relationships. I was just falling and wobbling all over the place. I just needed some coordination sooner, but it took me a while to be able to look back and learn the lesson. And I feel like I'm in a much more stable place. I have coordination with my body now in relationships in terms of walking. And some people learn faster in certain areas of life. but it's not about giving up on love, giving up on your career, or your books, or your message, or your art.
Yeah.
It's about learning. A friend of mine posted this video. His name's Devin Rodriguez. He got big on TikTok. I think he's got like 30 million followers in the last 2 years. He started drawing people on subways in New York City. And he would just see them, he would draw them, and he'd hand them a sketch, and people would be blown away. He did a video recently where he started learning in 2010 how to draw. And he posted a photo from 2010 to 2020, every year, his work. And it was ugly the first 5 years. I mean, you'd throw it away. It was so bad, right? It was like a 5-year-old sketch. It was like something I would do right now. It's about how I draw. But now it looks like you take a photo of someone and he can draw it perfectly. But it took him 10 years to master the skill. He didn't fail the first 5 years, 7 years. He fell forward by kept improving. And I think it's a beautiful lesson you're talking about. Don't think of it as failure, think of it as falling.
Bro, and so many people in our life, even our loved ones, want to tell us that we failed. And we begin to believe them.
Yeah.
And that's the problem. We've all committed to believing the lie that we have failed in life. We failed in our school, we failed in our relationships, we failed in our jobs. We haven't actually failed. But if you believe and listen to a lie long enough, you will be convinced that it's the truth.
Yeah.
And what I now practice is detangling so many of the lies that we've been told over time, deconstructing so many of the thoughts that we've believed over time, because it's those thoughts and it's those lies that bog us down.
Yeah.
And bro, this also blew my mind. The Mona Lisa. I went to Paris last summer. I went to the Louvre. And bro, you been to the Louvre?
I think I went to the outside. I didn't go inside.
Yes.
But yeah.
So I'm in the Louvre, and there's art everywhere.
Yeah.
There's art on the ceiling. There's freaking art on the walls. Art on the left side. Or there's art everywhere. As I'm walking through this, hundreds of acres seemingly, I see a huge long line
For the Mona Lisa.
I don't know yet. Though.
Yeah.
I don't know. So I'm like, what in the heck is
Yeah.
this line for? There's art everywhere, y'all. Why y'all standing in the line to see a piece of art? Just look left. I turn the corner, huge line for the Mona Lisa. I was like, I ain't waiting in the line, so I'm gonna just walk by and see. I look at it. It's nice. It's nice.
It's a painting.
It's a painting. Yeah. Painted somewhere from 1503 to 1518, I believe historians suggest. You realize if the Mona Lisa were painted today, might go to garage sale for $20.
Yeah, maybe.
Maybe. But why? Because the Mona Lisa back then depicted a pale woman with thin lips and a large forehead. And that was the depiction of beauty back then. Depiction of beauty in 2022, sun-kissed skin, thin waist, nice build. But why, bro, do we subscribe to a definition of beauty that somebody else set? Because you can never catch it. The definition of beauty in the 1500s, vastly different than the definition of beauty now. What was beautiful then, we don't value now. What we value now, we don't value then. But either way, we didn't even set it. Back to, why do we let such insignificant people have significance in our lives? And man, I'm just like, what all are we believing
Yes.
that we just don't need to?
Is clinical depression a thing, or is there a way to get out of it without medication?
Yeah, well, we pathologize. We pathologize too much. I think it's very good to make the diagnosis that doesn't have to pathologize like I'm sad, I'm scared. To use the language that it doesn't have to go to diagnosis and medical. Medicine is important. We have our blood, and that needs to be hopefully well tended to.
Yeah.
We have our environment, but the way you respond to the other two, I have a choice. To respond or react. When you react, you don't think.
How does someone learn how to pause when there's an event, when there's
Take a
when
deep
there's a
breath.
trigger?
Take a deep breath, and if that doesn't work, take another deep breath.
Keep breathing until you
Keep
react.
breathing, because you cannot change What's outside of you?
The environment, the event, what occurs.
You really are very powerless. But you have power the way you choose to take the negative and turn it into positive. Because suffering makes you stronger. Suffering is part of life.
Is there a way to minimize suffering in our lives?
You learn from history, so you won't repeat it. Yes. That's why it's good to write a book. Write a book. People told me for years, write a book, write a book. And I would say, I have nothing to say, I have nothing to say. But then Philip Zimbardo one morning calls me and says, you know, Edie, the people who survived and are famous are all men. We need a female voice. And that's my book, The Choice.
Right.
A female voice of Viktor Frankl.
Wow, it's beautiful. You mentioned, I want to ask you about the fears again, writing down a list of your fears and then knocking them down. What happens internally when we start to knock these fears down and we
You replace it with something else. See, when you're in a car and you have to switch gears, you know, it talks to you, the car. So what you need to do is switch gears and release the clutch. What are you holding on to? My definition of love is the ability to let go. Let go. Don't live in the past. You cannot change the past. That's one thing you cannot change, is the past. I don't live in the past. I don't forget it or overcome it. That's why I call it my cherished wound, because part of me was left in Auschwitz, but not the better part, not the bigger part.
How do you reclaim that part from that?
You go back to that place, and you can do it in your office with a Gestalt chair. Put them in that chair, tie them up, and beat them up.
Sure.
Yeah.
Wow.
How could you do this to me? I was only 8 years old, you know, and you get it out, scream it out, and beat them up.
If we don't get that emotion out, then we're the ones that suffer, right?
Yeah, because forgiveness has nothing to do with me forgiving you for what you did to me. I don't have any godly power at all, but I do have a power to look at everything that happened into an opportunity, for an opportunity. And that was Auschwitz, the biggest classroom, the most important one I have gone to.
Wow. So, do we need to forgive the person that created the pain? Do we need to forgive ourselves? What is harder?
I think we create a time when I give myself permission. That's a very good word. Give myself permission to let go of the pain and replace it with self-love, which is self-care, which is not narcissistic. Love yourself is not narcissistic.
Yeah. So give myself permission to let go of the pain from the past.
Permission is a key word.
And then replace it with self-love.
You know, if I could meet Dr. Mengele now, I really wanted to meet him, and I found out where he was, but I never really ended up meeting him in person. He went to South America. Most of the Nazis went through the Roman Catholics somehow helped them to go through them to go to South
America.
America.
Yeah. What would you have said to him? If you could have met him, what would you have said to him?
I would probably tell him, I have no idea what I would have done if I would have been in your shoes. You must have felt very powerful, sending my mother to the gas chamber, because he asked me, is this your sister or is this your mother? I still want to cry, but now that stupidly I said it's my mother, because I could not forgive myself that if I would have said my sister, she wouldn't have gone to the gas chamber. But then I had to recognize that I did what I could.
No, you did the best.
And I did the best I could.
Yeah.
So forgiving yourself and not to judge yourself, you got to really truly do the work.
Yeah. That's powerful. I'm curious.
Suffering is make you stronger.
How much?
Don't ask for it.
I don't want suffering.
Please.
you don't need to ask for it.
It's not a must. No.
No. But it makes you
when
stronger.
it happens, recognize that it's temporary.
Yes.
And you can survive it. So you become your own good parent.
Yes.
Are you a good parent to you?
Now I am. Yeah.
Okay.
After a lot of the healing work,
Yeah.
now I'm a very good parent to myself. Yeah. I feel a lot of peace inside.
Well, you're
But I
a
didn't
role
feel that for
model.
years. Yeah.
You say what you live.
Yeah.
That's good.
Yeah. It's a constant journey,
Congratulations.
Thank you. But a lot of your, the first time I interviewed you, I was really inspired by how you shared so much wisdom about how to not take things personally and how to reinterpret when someone's saying something to you, just say, no, well, you're saying the opposite to yourself of like how you love yourself and how you're generous and kind. So I really appreciate that.
Well, just a very simple question. Whatever you're doing now, you ask, how is it working for you?
Yeah.
Is it empowering you or depleting you?
Well, you're right. It has to do with understanding who you are. And the thing is, in understanding who you are, you have to understand what you are. You see, it's not, and your relationship to the rest. Because if you're trying to manifest,